I'll start with the B lever here. It sits here. Little bronze bush or brass bush that goes through that. And then this retaining screw here. Of course, look, none of this wants to stay there. This spring's pushing it out of line, so I've got to just another routine job where you really need 3 hands. It's in. Is it on the right side? Yes, it is. Okay. And this other end of the spring has to hook behind that other little lever so that that will be spring loaded too. Oh, it doesn't want to stay there. Is that bent out of shape, that spring? Oh no, I just didn't have it clipped down far enough. No, that's good. Right. I'll just put a tiny wipe of molybdenum paste on some of these components. So that things will move smoothly. The shutter release, he's still on key, yeah, I'm still here, just. The shutter release needs to fit over its post, which is here. And the default setting here is the T setting. Now why is that not lifting off? That's better. Cocked. It's lifting up, it's not pressing against that lever. I think this is bent. Let me have a look at that. I'll bend that down slightly. It's always a bit fraught. Tiny little components like this, you make a little adjustment bend and you can just as easily end up snapping them in half. Now I'm on the wrong side of that. Oh yes, something is bent here. What is it? Why is that lifting off? On the return stroke, it should lift over the top of that, lift back. Alright, something's not working correctly here. I've got to work out what it is that's going wrong. It's latched in place, and on a second movement it's not dropping down. Why is that not dropping down? that should lift. Set the shutter open. Is this not returning far enough? Oh, something is not right. Something I'm not seeing here. It latches in position. And this should move it on the second movement. It's not doing it. Alright, I've got to figure out what's bent here. There's lots of little bits and pieces of these levers, and something is not doing what it should do. It latches into the B lever. This should yeah, it's moving as it should, but I'm not sure what the difference is. Well, that's a bit unfortunate. I could never see what the original problem was, and now it seems to have gone away. Never mind, we'll carry on and we'll see if it continues to work correctly. So I'm just putting the high-speed spring in position. And here I've got the lever that gives us our return spring for the shutter release, and also our cable release. Or in the case of this particular shutter, that's where the plunger would go, because there's a little accessory plunger that can go there. Let's get this arm in position. Getting the spring tucked down in the case is sometimes entertaining. Like today. Now it's sitting on top of that spring. Let's get that out of the way. That's better. Why wouldn't it do that the first time round? Okay. B and T lever are working faultlessly there. Why they weren't doing that for, I still don't know. I hate that. Anyway, let's get this in place. this position where the cable release, or in this case the plunger, would fit, was utilised by Deckel in later shutters as a position to put the flash sync mechanism. Of course this camera doesn't have a flash sync, because such things were not done in the mid-30s. Excuse me. Let's get this little catch seated in place. This catch's job is to hold the shutter in the cocked position. When you've cocked the shutter, I've just got that in not quite right there. Let's move that over a bit. Better. Let's get that screw in place. That looks good. The blade, this piece here is called the main lever. Why they called something that was round a lever, I'm blowed if I know. Goes against nature. Still, it's the main lever, and we need to get it clean and working correctly. Now there's a patch of corrosion on it here. That plating is blistered up, and it probably means that's a bit rough there. I want to get that blister off there so that that part will move smoothly. Yeah, that didn't happen by itself. It must have got wet at some stage. This little piece here is called the bird paw, and that's job is to operate the piece here that opens and closes the blade. So, molybdenum paste once around the inside, once around the outside edge, some at the head of the bird paw, usually with a wipe at the tail there. Taking the shutter, there's a couple of spots here I want to touch. On the retard gear train, on that arm there where it contacts the settings plate, and here, and here, and I think that will do. So get this ring into position, this main lever, make sure the B lever is not trapped underneath it. Hold back the pallet, swing that arm in, hook the spring in place. Check that it cocks, it does. That should be ready to go. Let's clean the speed settings cam. Now the main operating fault with the shutter was certainly that the retard gear train was quite clogged up with dust and dried lubricants, I'd say. And that's why the slow speeds were exceptionally slow. We'll put this plate in place and we'll see what sort of result we get. And I think it'll go quite well. It'll certainly be as sprightly as you can expect an 85-year-old shutter to be. Right, where's our B lever? There it is. Okay, so this should be B. T rather. That's fine. This is B. This is 1 second. And a tenth of a second is somewhere around about here. That wasn't bad. 1 second. That sounds okay. Alright, I'm going to put the retainer plate on the front and test my speeds and see what we've got. This is a bit clogged up with dirty old grease. It really needs none of that. This goes on there and rotates to that position, and the lock screw rotates from there. If I could see what I've done with the screwdriver. I've probably knocked it onto the floor. No, there it is. A tenth and a 25th of the telling speeds for these shutters. If you've got the retard gear train in less than an ideal position, you can end up with a situation where the 25th speed is actually running slower than the 10th speed, which is a good indication that things aren't good. Right, on the 500th, turn it to there, cock it. It's much tighter to cock, of course, and bang, away it goes. On the B, it's nice and snappy. On the T, the shutter's good. I'm pretty confident about those speeds, so I'm just going to put the nameplate on now and then go and test the shutter. Speeds were typically, they were expected to be within 20% of the marked speed, and they were expected to have repeatability within 10%. So when you're exceptionally enthusiastic, you could do a series. You could spend half an hour at the shutter tester writing down your results, 10 exposures at each setting, work out what your standard deviations were and all the rest of it. But in practice, none of that's really required for this. The speeds are nice, they're progressive, they're smooth. That's great. I'll test those and then come back, fit the lenses, put this on the camera body. Yeah, the shutter speeds were good. No problem. Let's have a look at these lenses. Well, this is the rear component, the interior surface, the one closest to the shutter blade that I'm cleaning at the moment. And I've got the window light coming in from my right here, so I can judge how clean I've got that from the reflections on the glass. This is the outer surface, the surface facing the film chamber. And you'd expect that to be a bit dirtier. There's certainly a mark on that. What it is and how permanent it is, I don't know. Let's do that up and have another round of cleaning on that surface and see what I get. There's something there. What's that? Yeah, it doesn't want to go away. I'll get a toothpick and probe at it. Sometimes it's hard to tell whether you've got a lump of something on the lens or whether it's a scratch. And if you run a toothpick across it, you can sometimes tell. Whatever it is isn't coming away, and I suspect that it's a mark or a chip on the back of that lens. Let's take an eyeglass and have a look at that. It's certainly a scratch of some sort. It's odd. It's not like a discrete sharp scratch. There's a little rough spot there. The whole glass is less than stunning. You'd say it was coating marks, except of course the lens isn't coated. I think we'll just have to let that go. I think that's probably as good as we can hope to get. I'll clean the mount on this front component just to remove any grease or dirt that's on it. And I'll clean the glass. Clean the interior surface first, the one that's closest to the shutter blades, and I can judge by reflected window light how well I'm doing on that. And I'll clean the outside surface. This is dirt here. I rotate my cotton bud so I keep presenting a clean surface to that glass. There's every likelihood to avoid the possibility of picking up a particle of grit and then rubbing it carefully into the glass surface, which of course you wouldn't want to do. Now that looks very good. That lens looks fine to me. and that doesn't leave much to do here. The retaining ring has had a bit of a hard life. It's been dealt to by any number of tools over the last 85 years, and a lot of the chemical blackening of course is gone. So it's a bit of a bright brass retaining ring. I'll just blacken that with a pen. In an ideal world you'd have a matte black pen to do that, but I don't have such a thing. Oh, that looks nice. And fit the shutter to the camera body. Those bellows are good now. They're great result. Very pleased with that. Using a toothpick to get that retaining ring started. Once it picks up the thread, I'm away laughing. It should wind on quite easily because the thread's nice and clean. That's running on now. Now the challenge here is to get the shutter tight, the retaining ring tight, and have the alignment mark here for the focus scale ring correctly aligned at the infinity position, which is there, and trying to get this all to happen at the same time, which is only marginally difficult. Why they didn't have an alignment pin, something to hold the shutter in a fixed position, I'm blowed if I know. They certainly should have done. Well, getting this to happen is tricky. The shutter's either loose or it's in the wrong position, or both. I'll bring you back when I've achieved it.